As fantastic a CFP as Mel O is, as wonderful an attorney as I am, and as good as Stormy is at whatever it is he does, please do note that anything said in our podcasts are our opinions alone and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice.
Welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, a Gen Xer podcast for musicians and music lovers, where we discuss money and music without all the pretentious bullshit. Here are your hosts, Zoe Terry, attorney at large, Stormy Andrews, founder of Yokel Local Marketing, and Mel O, certified financial planner and author of Finances, the Other F Word. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, and today we are finishing out our segment of, I guess, megachurches and churches and why aren't they taxed. We went over a couple things. Our first episode was the IRS definitions. Our second one was talking a little bit about the televangelists and their net worth. Our third episode was about the assets and revenues from what we could compile together as best we could on the Mormon Church and the Catholic Church. And today, since we've been kind of beating up the church sector a little bit, we are going to just kind of talk about other nonprofits, and we're going to kind of see how they parlay in comparison to basically the churches as far as tax exempt status. Zoe and I are both here. I was looking at my boobs while I was listening to the intro music, and I thought, man, this shirt really makes my boobs look good. What do you think?
I can't see your boobs. Yeah, they look great.
Yeah. Also, it's a good bra. I mean, I guess I shouldn't let it fool you. But anyway, it was making me feeling a little saucy with that. So how are you holding up? Still in quarantine, Zoe?
Life's a peach.
So did you hear that Las Vegas's Mayor Carolyn Goodman was on CNN earlier today saying that it was ridiculous for those of you who don't live in the Vegas area. Carolyn Goodman is our mayor, mayor of North Las Vegas area, and she has been very adamant and very vocal about reopening the Strip. And today she went on CNN and she basically said that the Strip needs to reopen, and some of her direct quotes were something to the effect, you can read the article, it was actually kind of embarrassing. I understand what she's saying economically, but she literally said, let's have all the businesses reopen, and those who have coronavirus will fail because they'll basically get coronavirus and they'll have to shut down again, and then the competition will naturally weed them out. It's the craziest shit I've ever read. And I'm like, there's a lot better economic arguments that you could post and have a conversation with besides saying that type of thing. And it was just that her quotes from the CNN were just, it was really kind of embarrassing. And I like Carolyn Goodman. I don't have any issues with her in specific, and I do agree that the economy's got to really start getting back on track of opening up just from an economic standpoint. But you got to read the article, and it's all over Facebook right now. At least Las Vegas locals are like, what in the fuck did this lady just say? Did you not see that?
I saw an interview with her yesterday on MSNBC where she just came across like just a doddering old fool, and I heard that Anderson Cooper ripped her a new one today. But she just, yeah.
And for those, so for those of you who don't live in Vegas, we used to have a mayor, Oscar Goodman, and he was very beloved. And Oscar Goodman used to be an attorney for the mob back in the days of Vegas and mob time. And he was very popular. He was always, touting Las Vegas, which, I mean, we dig. Bombay gin was his favorite thing, and he was always drinking, and he was always, as much as possible, photographed with showgirls. And nice guy, very well liked. I think we had a mayor after him, and then his wife ran, Carolyn Goodman, and she's the one who has been kind of making us look a little crazy on the news channels. But so that just happened recently. So I'm sure you guys will see that or catch wind, or if you're already Las Vegas residents by the time you read this is going to already be a couple days old. But anywho, so we took two of the major nonprofits that we could think of. Zoe took Salvation Army, and I took the United Way, and we did the best we could to go through their finances, again, because they're a tax-exempt nonprofit, same situation as the churches. They don't have to disclose stuff. And we just wanted to kind of compare so that we could do an apples-to-apples comparison as best as we could, so that it wasn't just like we were slamming the church sector in general. So Zoe has some numbers for us on the Salvation Army, and I will let her take it away.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about their background first, because it was very interesting, because I didn't know a lot about them other than they're the ones with the red bucket outside Albertsons that you always avoid eye contact with and tell yourself you'll get them on the way out and then avoid them.
I just for the record, I always do. I always give to the Salvation Army around Christmas time. I always do.
Yeah, me too. Anyway, so
liar.
So the Salvation Army was actually founded in 1865 in the East End of London, mate, by William Booth, who was an evangelist who wanted to offer practical help to the poor and preach the gospel to them at the same time. Originally, they were called the Christian Mission, but they changed their name to the Salvation Army in 1878. A couple of fun facts for you. The Beatles song Strawberry Fields Forever was John Lennon's reference to a Salvation Army orphanage called Strawberry Field that was located in Walton in England, which was apparently behind a field that he used to play in as a child. So that's a fun little fact for you there. Another little fun fact, a little bit more relevant for us perhaps, is the phrase "on the wagon" was coined by men and women who were receiving services from the Salvation Army. William Booth's daughter, Evangeline Booth, used to drive a hay wagon through the streets of New York to encourage alcoholics to get on board for a ride back to the Salvation Army. So alcoholics that were in recovery were said to be on the wagon.
Ah, that's actually interesting. Yeah. Are you on the wagon, Zoe?
Cheers, mate.
I will take that as a no, she is not. It's quarantine, y'all. You just got to get through it. Jesus.
I'm going to say I'm in quarantine with two teenage boys.
That's enough.
It's a hard no.
Yeah.
So, as the Salvation Army grew and adopted that new name, it also adopted a kind of quasi-military structure, where with Booth becoming the general, and they started wearing uniforms, which you see them wearing still now, and they would go to more dangerous places to save souls of the poor, using the only weapon was the word of God and music. And they would set up centers for people to obtain food and shelter. And they also sought to convert people to Christianity through prayer and by setting an example through their own behavior and lifestyle. But music was always really important to the Salvation Army. And apparently William Booth famously said, "Why should the devil have all the best tunes?" I thought you might like that.
Yeah. I mean, the devil does have good music. Let's face it.
Doesn't he though? I mean, but still, he had a good point. Now the Salvation Army has approximately 2,500 brass bands worldwide. And who doesn't love a good brass band? I
love brass bands. I do. I'm not even kidding you. Are you being facetious or are you serious?
I was being facetious, but I knew that you would love. Why wouldn't you?
Yay!
Now, according to the Salvation Army's website, they are an international movement and an evangelical part of the Universal Christian Church. And their message is based on the Bible, motivated by the love of God, and its mission is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ and to meet human needs in the name. Oh, pardon me. Oh, that's terrible. In his name. I couldn't read my own handwriting, so his name with a capital H. I presume that means
yes.
The big G, without
or J. Yeah.
Oh yeah, G or J,
same
whoever.
Thing. Mm-hmm.
And they provide so many different kinds of support, disaster relief, support to the LGBTQ peeps, homeless shelters, food pantries, alcohol and drug rehab, veteran services. They assist approximately 23 million Americans annually. They're in 130 countries globally. They have women's ministries, prison ministries, music ministries, multimedia ministries, and they partner with huge corporations. So, how about their financials? Well, little bit difficult to find out, as you can imagine. According to Forbes, they are number 4 on the 100 largest U.S. charities in 2019. Trying to dig into, how much their leaders earn. David Hudson is the current head honcho. David Jeffrey was his predecessor. He had allegedly earned about 140,000 annually. National Commander is his name.
The CEO is called the National Commander?
Yeah, because they're quasi military, remember? They all have
Wow. And how much did he make?
His salary, or whatever they called it, was about 140,000. So from what the research we could tell, I could tell. Now on their website, they do actually list financial summaries, but they're not as in depth as. So you can go on the most recent one being 2018 so far, and it tells you that their revenue in 2018 was almost 4 million, and it does actually break it down into what that revenue came from. So in 2018, their revenue, 53% of that was came from direct public support. 16% was from investment income. 15% was sales to the public. 10% was government funds. 4% was program service fees, and 2% was other revenue. So to be fair to them, although I don't think they necessarily have to, they, there's some transparency there. There are financial summaries on their own website. But just like, for all intents and purposes, they are a church, so they don't have to complete the form. What is it? 9, whatever it is, the IRS form.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they don't have to file an IRS form 990, which is a lot more detailed because they're exempt. So, but they do, like I said, unlike certain organizations, certain churches, most churches, they don't actually have to produce the rigorous financial statements of a Form 990. They do put a financial statement from each year on their website. There was an article in the Paddock Post from December 2015 where they tried to analyze where does the dollar that you donate to the Salvation Army every holiday actually go. And their research indicated that in 2014, the Salvation Army reported $11 billion in assets. And in America, the Salvation Army is overseen by the Salvation Army National Corps. And the USA is split into 4 division territories: the Central Territory, the Southern Territory, the Western Territory, and the Eastern Territory. And within each territory is a state division. Some have to file an IRS Form 990 as they receive public funds. But like I said, because it's a church or it's exempt under the same rules, the IRS doesn't require them to submit it, but it does submit one for one of their 6 organizations, the Salvation Army World Service Office. And all the other 5 have to do is submit annual audited financial statements, which I just discussed. They're on their websites, but on their website. But the 4 territories in 2014 raised $4.1 billion
Nice.
and spent $3.5 billion. So it had a net profit of $600 million in 2014. So it's a very wealthy organization. The largest liability out of all of its liabilities from their research was its employees. Other than that, its other liabilities were its investments, its land, its buildings and equipment, and its pensions and retirement benefits. But just like everything else, it's hard to get any kind of firm numbers on these tax-exempt organizations because they don't have to file anything. But at least, like I said, there's some transparency in that they do post their financial statements on their website. So that's my input on the Salvation Army.
Okay, so for my part, I did the United Way. And off of the United Way's website, it says that the United Way is engaged in nearly 1,800 communities across more than 40 countries and territories worldwide. They are focused on creating community-based and community-led solutions that strengthen the cornerstones for a good quality of life, education, financial stability, and health. So, of course, I really dig the financial stability thing. And the current CEO, I approached this a little bit differently. I didn't get too much in the history of United Way. Brian Gallagher is the current CEO of United Way, and what ended up happening is in 2009, United Way and United Way International joined to form the United Way Worldwide, and now he is the president and the CEO. And 2012, it was revealed that he made around $1.5 million to lead the United Way. Now, I'm going to try to compare this as much as I can. Again, a lot of our stuff is kind of piecemeal given the situation of the tax exemption. So to put that in perspective based on their total revenues. So on the year that I'm looking at here, which I believe was in 2017. Now, for United Way, they actually seem to be pretty transparent, and on their website they have audited financial statements, and we've talked a little bit about audited financial statements before. You can kind of make a financial statement say whatever it is you want it to say, but when it's an audited financial statement, that means a CPA firm has came in and looked at the numbers, and basically they're authenticating them. And if you're a publicly traded company, one of the things that you need to have is audited financials. So United Way has audited financials, which I thought was very nice. And for this year, in perspective, they made $175,832,756. And so when we're talking about how much Brian Gallagher makes is in response to the total amount, when we talk about the United Way, his salary represents 0.89% of United Way's total budget. And just to kind of put that in context, when we talked about Joe Osteen, his $200,000 salary represented about 0.22% of the total budget. So in retrospect, it kind of looks as if, maybe Joe could have been paid more. But of course, if you're selling books to a captive audience, then obviously you don't really need to get paid too much for that. And based on some of the information that was on their website, plus some of the other information I found, as far as their assets go, about 8.29% of their assets are cash and cash equivalents. And then property and equipment, because we talked a lot about the churches and their property, is about 32.89% of their total assets. And investments, United Way investments actually make up 39.5% of their assets, and that was very interesting to me. I would love to see as far as how they're actually investing. And they were running in the positive of about $81 million. According to the information that's on their website. And when we're looking at their revenues, we talked a lot about Catholic Charities in the last episode, and about how 65% of their budget was given by the United States in either grants or contracts or something of that nature. According to United Way's financial statements that they have on their website, they're showing that public support and other revenues make up about 12.77% of their revenue, where membership and support make up about 71%, and contributions actually only make up 0.19%. So that's very interesting. So I'm wondering, does that mean contributions as an individual person? Like you or me giving to them, or are they calling that something else and it's not specifically contributions? And then any type of material sales, they're listing as 6.31%. And so when we're looking at here, I found a lot of stuff that was very interesting in United Way. They have a ton of programs that they do. A lot of them are financial, where maybe they do taxes for free, or they actually issue a lot of grants. And this is one thing that I found very, very exciting, that I was excited to share with Zoe, because we've mentioned on this podcast, we are both pro-choice. And not that this is a direct funding of the pro-choice movement, but I found that out of 1,129 local United Ways in the United States, 58 provided direct funding to Planned Parenthood. And I thought that was really great. Now, that amount of the financial support that they give Planned Parenthood represents less than 1/10 of 1% of the total United Way revenue. So all you people who are pro-life, don't go getting all fucking bent out of shape because you think that United Way is doing this massive fund to Planned Parenthood. And my biggest bone of contention is with this is that everybody goes, oh, Planned Parenthood, abortions. Well, when I was really young, I had to go to Planned Parenthood because my parents couldn't afford a lot of stuff, and they fucking helped me, and it wasn't about abortion. So I'm just kind of putting that out there because it's one of my biggest bone of contentions that seems to have when we talk about that sort of thing. And when we're looking at different information from the United Way, they have a little bit of different kind of take on it. And so comparatively to Lakewood Church, which is the church of Joel Osteen, because we really kind of hit him hard, I wanted to kind of look and just say comparative, how much do they spend roughly on different things. So we talked about the compensation. Joel Osteen got 0.22% of the budget, where Brian gets 0.89% of the budget, slightly higher there. Approximately 3% of their revenue goes to administration, where in the Lakewood Church for Joel Osteen, 12.77% went as part of his budget, that the best they can tell. And 2% of the revenue is spent on fundraising for the United Way, versus Lakewood Church for Joel Osteen was 13.22%. So the church was spending way more money on fundraising and is spending way more money at administrative. Now, I know that typically in the tax exempt sector and the nonprofit, they haven't really been, it's not known to be the best paying jobs. But I just found that very interesting. And the best part of it was that 95% of their expenses went to programs. So when we talked about Joel Osteen, his church, I believe 1.29%, and that was outreach and helping. 1.29% of the overall budget was going to helping and outreaching for the church. And here we see in the United Way, 95% estimated of the expenses are actually spent on trying to help people, which I just thought was really disappointing, that somebody who is a person of God would be kind of put to shame by the United Way. And the United Way has a lot of different ways that they raise money, where if we're looking at a church situation, with the exception of the Mormon Church, who has been quite creative with their revenue streams, we have, with the Catholic Church, we have donations and tithing and, buying things and the grants and stuff that go into Catholic charities. But there's kind of it's not really a lot of different revenue streams coming in. So one of the things that United Way really makes their money on is, yes, people can give donations, but they do a lot of payroll deductions. And I remember when I worked at one of the major banks, they would come through and it was like, hey, you need to donate something or not donate something, but you need to either say, I'm not going to donate or I am going to donate. And of course, those deductions are tax deductible. And that is something that I did for probably a pretty long time, donated to the United Way, and it comes right out of your check. And so that's very smart. Whoever initially set that up way back in the day, I have absolutely no idea. But because maybe of United Way's longevity, or the fact that it appears to be ran more like a business for a nonprofit and not a business as comparative to the church, because we looked at the Catholic Church's revenues and expenses as best we could. We looked at the Mormon Church revenues and expenses as best we could, and they are definitely being ran as a business as well. But it seems that they have found ways to increase their revenue streams by doing a lot of corporate sponsorships. The big ones that are on their website right now are the Starbucks Foundation, Annie Casey Foundation, Manpower Development Corporation, H&R Block, Stacy's Pita Chips, which I've never heard of, but I just thought, man, that's great that they're giving money to the United Way, FINRA, Investor Education Foundation, which was totally at my heart right there, Bank of America, London School of Economics and Political Science for Zoe, National Disability Institute, SunTrust, Synchrony Financial, Local Initiatives Support Corporation, Walmart, Wells Fargo, and Geico, Pepsi, Lyft. And so what they have done is they've started to actually pair with the United Way, and they do a variety of different things. So for instance, the pita chip company that I just mentioned, they had a specific run of a certain type of pita chip that I guess people really dug, and proceeds from that actually generated money to go to the United Way. Plus, on top of that, they actually gave some money. Starbucks gave over $250,000, and all of this is on their website. They've also been very successful pairing with the National Football League, and so the United Way is really has their stuff into everything. So I was trying to figure out, since I can't really get good solid numbers in comparative to the Catholic Church or comparative to the Mormon Church or comparative to the Lakewood Church, which is all things we've talked about in these series of podcasts, I tried to go back and I tried to see, okay, are they overpaying? So one of the episodes that we did was we did a disparity episode where we talked about the difference between, and it was episode 19 for those of you who want to go back, and we talked about the disparity of payment between stuntmen and movie stars, and we talked about Avengers Endgame was one of the things we talked about. We talked about the difference between studio musicians and rock stars, what they get paid. And then we talked about the huge discrepancy of CEO pay and the average worker. And we talked about how that actually came about and the legislation that came in under Bill Clinton that actually enabled it to do that. And at the time, we referenced some numbers. And so when we took these 5 companies, as far as like what the CEO made as far as a spread over how much a average worker makes, we saw that the CVS, the drugstores, CEOs were paid 434 to 1 over what an average worker would make. CBS, the CEOs were 395 to 1 over an average worker. Disney, which we've had an episode on Disney, and we talked about their monopoly, 367 to 1. TJ Maxx, 327 to 1, and 21st Century Fox, 311 to 1, because we were talking about those discrepancies between the CEOs. Now, as far as what Brian Gallagher as the CEO gets paid, he's estimated to be worth about $35.6 million. And net worth has been a big thing that we've been harping on this podcast, and so I want to keep it level. So he is in the nonprofit sector, though it's not religious based, and he is worth about $35.6 million. And a huge chunk of it is actually positions he has in a publicly traded company, which I thought was very interesting. And you can Google that, and it'll tell you right there. And so then I was like, okay, well, let me try to circle back and let me just try to understand a little bit how the United Way works in comparison to publicly traded companies that I just mentioned, CBS, 21st Century Fox, Disney, etc. And so the average manager at United Way earns anywhere between $47,000 and $81,000. So the median income in between that is about $64,000 per year. And in comparison to that, the $1.318 million that in this reporting, it was reported that Brian makes is a 20%, so not a 20%, a 20 to 1 ratio from the average manager. On the community relations manager, those make about $39,000. The CEO pay was a 33 to 1. And a senior director of makes anywhere between $74,000 and $190,000 per year with a median income of 132. And so the CEO is a 10 times more, a 10 to 1 ratio. So the reason why I wanted to focus on that a little bit, so when we're looking at expenses and we're looking at as far as what they're actually paying their people, we want to kind of look and we want to focus at, okay, he makes a lot of money and he's worth a lot of money, but is he worth a lot of money where, like we see in a lot of these publicly traded companies, where they're just basically just up and away over more of their average workers and they're really not kind of caring about their workers? Well, this is telling me that that is not the case as far as in the discrepancy between the ratio between the CEO pay and the average pay. And so that kind of made me feel a lot better about the United Way in general. And the fact that they have successfully, instead of going after specific people to tithe, which is little people like you and I, they've been able to partner more so with bigger corporations that have been able to flip more of their bills so that they have a broader reach. And they have a lot of grants that you can actually try to apply for and that you can get funding from United Way for a variety of different things, as well as a variety of different services that they do. And so when I sit back and I kind of look at just from our very small, we got kind of an echo going on again, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to get rid of that. Okay. So when we're looking at as far as a church goes who is, spreading a message of God and who is very dependent on tithing and other revenue streams, like how we talked about a little bit within the Mormon Church. And then you look at how there's a nonprofit that is non-secular or non-religious. Is it secular? I don't even know if I'm using it.
Secular means not religious.
Okay, so non-secular. And we're looking at something like that, which seems to be from just, again, the little surface scratch that Zoe and I both did. There are financials. Now they're outdated, but there are financials or some type of financials that are on their website versus the churches that seem to be keeping the stuff under wraps still. And they are at least more transparent and more inclusive. And it really, for a believer in God, it was disheartening for me from a money standpoint. Now, I still believe in God. I'm still going to go to church. I'll still tithe. It doesn't change any of that stuff. But I wonder what the difference is if religion has had the tax exempt status for so long that they just give zero fucks because they don't have to disclose anything. And they're very comfortable not disclosing shit because they have believers who believe in God and who believe in their mission and who are going to tithe and who are going to give stuff regardless, right? Versus a United Way or a Salvation Army who understands that they have tax exempt status, but they have to give the public something because they don't. Well, I mean, Salvation Army is kind of secular, but they, in the case of United Way, they can't go, hey, this is for God and this is for spreading the word of God. They have to, it sounds horrible, they have to actually do something. And I know that religion and churches, big churches, little churches, medium churches, I know that they have a lot of outreach in the community. But when I look at numbers like this, as a believer, it's very disheartening. And like I said, it's not going to change anything. It's not going to change my belief in God, but it's really fucked up. And I would love to see, like Zoe has mentioned multiple times, I would love to see one of the big churches come out and go, hey, look, this is what we're doing, and this is the money that we're collecting, and stop being so secretive, because just because you can be secretive doesn't mean necessarily you should be. And I think that it would make it a little bit easier for people to trust the church and trust religions. I don't know. I mean, that's just kind of my 2 cents. So I approached it a little bit differently than Zoe, but that's just my experience of coming through this segment. And please do not base any financial decisions on our research, because Jesus Christ, I mean, there's way better articles written out there, way better people who can speak to this on a much more knowledgeable basis. But I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at. What are you thinking, Zoe, at the end of our journey?
Oh, yeah, nothing changed, in my opinion, from what from my research. It was interesting that the the faith-based. I mean, Salvation Army is faith-based too. I mean, it's that they're completely,
secular.
like I said, a faith. They're not secular. They are.
Oh, they're not secular. Okay.
Yeah, they are a faith-based charity. So they're very much like, is United Way or not?
I didn't find anything in there that United Way was faith-based at all.
Right.
Okay. And I mean, obviously they do give a very tiny amount to Planned Parenthood, which just made me go, man, I would really like to give money to United Way besides their financial literacy platform, which obviously I'm a big fan of. I just like the fact that they're not tied to those restrictions that often come. And let's face it, people, they're restrictions that often come with being a believer and a follower of God, quite frankly.
Yeah. I would be more, even though Salvation Army is faith-based, they seem to be much more inclusive in who they're willing to support. They have a big LGBTQ support base, and alcohol and drug rehab and veterans. I mean, they're just not, it's not just people who believe.
Mm-hmm. And to be fair, the recent Pope has been really modern, progressive as far as on his thoughts on like the LGBT community and things like that. And so you might hear my cuckoo clock going off in the background. Yay!
That's great.
But so, he has been trying to, in my opinion, pull the Catholic Church into the what are we,
modern day?
Yeah, modern day. I was going to say 21st century, but that was actually past. So anyway, whatever century we're talking about now, he's trying to pull them into it, and I really did appreciate that. So anyway, and I wanted to ask our listeners a favor. So we really, we've launched a YouTube channel. For any of you guys that are on YouTube or you just want to see what Stormy, Zoe, and I look like, hop on YouTube.
We're beautiful.
Stormy,
not so much.
Yeah. Zoe's hit and miss on it. I got to be for real, but for the most part, I'm looking pretty good. Stormy just looks like Stormy, so he always looks the same. But if you want to check that out, not all of the episodes have actual visual to them. Some of them are just audio, but check that out. But more importantly, and we talk about this a lot. I mean, I felt like we talk about this a lot, but maybe we don't. We need you guys to rate us and review us and subscribe. I watch the numbers. I look at them at least 3 times a day, and I see when people come on. I see when people backload us, and I see when people stay. I know where they're coming from. I know what locations. I know what episode people came in at.
We know where you live.
We know where you live. And I'm a fucking nerd, and I got it in spreadsheets and charts and all this kind of stuff. But we need you guys to rate and review us. I mean, this is super important. And quite frankly, I don't ask you guys enough, but we really need it. And I know you guys are quarantined. I know you got the fucking time. So
yeah, what else you got to do? For
right.
goodness sake?
Right, exactly. I mean, seriously, a minute and just drop us a rate and review, subscribe to us, tell all your friends, help us out. We put a ton of work into this, and we do it for you guys, and we enjoy doing it, don't get me wrong. But, if you could rate and review us, that would really greatly help us very much. And, of course, if you have want a consultation with me, you can reach me at mel@hotmoonfinancial.com. Stormy's big thing is tomorrow, so hopefully you emailed him in regards to his webinar, which actually is the day this airs. So once this airs, it will actually be passed. So I guess that's kind of pointless. Yeah. So thanks. So hopefully you did that and you got in on that. And of course, if you want to talk cats, then you can always hit Zoe up.
bigsisfish@gmail.com.
Yep. And we will be back. We hope you guys are dealing with quarantine. And hey, I got a book out. So maybe check that out on Amazon too. Dude, it's an easy read. It's an easy read. Read it on the toilet. Yeah. Read it while you're drinking.
I did.
Yeah.
I read it while I was
pooing. And Zoe's on the toilet a lot. So
yeah, I poo at least twice a day, just so it's real clear. I'm very, very regular.
I'm very envious of that. So we will catch you guys next time. And thanks for listening.
Bye.
Be sure to check out our Finances, the Other F Words playlists for each episode on Spotify.